Alright, so you want that cinematic look, but this is a way of editing that many people don't try to teach. This is a way to get cinematic looking grades that is very different to how other people are teaching.
What the fuck are you doing? Wait, what?
So don't let people say that you have to have DaVinci Resolve to get really nice color grades that look like movies. You have just about every single tool. There's a few missing in Final Cut, but you can get a really long way in Final Cut. So we're gonna go over a start to finish cinematic color grade in Final Cut Pro, as well as giving you a quick overview of Final Cut Pro, how to use it, and I will give you footage to follow along with. When I first started color grading, I really liked a flat looking image. I almost like the image coming out of the camera in a flat picture profile more than the graded images a lot of the time. Just a little more contrast. So the cinematic look is flat. It is white flat compared to, say, normal television where you would make those whites really bright and those blacks very dark. So you want to take contrast out or add only a very small amount of contrast in. So this look isn't for everyone, and I'm not sure 100% if it's gonna be the look I go for going forward. For the last couple of years, when I watch a video and someone is shooting very flat, I think it looks the best. Just about as flat as you can go, but personally I just really love it. So the very first thing I'd tell you to do is to work with wheels and not this tool here, which is color board. This is the old way, and you should be using color wheels. Come up to Final Cut Pro and you go to settings, color correction, put this to color wheels, and this will be your default. Okay, so color grading in general is very simple, but it's about making the right move at the right time, the right amount, and knowing when to do that. That's the difficult part. Very simple color grades can look really good because the camera manufacturers do a pretty good job of getting a really high quality looking image, and pretty often people make it look worse in editing. Okay, so this is how I color graded this clip here. So this is the effects, but what Final Cut does if you're shooting with Canon in its highest quality format is Final Cut will automatically put Canon Log 3 or Canon Log 2 onto your image. So it will take it from a flat. So this is how it looks in the camera. This is how flat it is in camera, and when you bring it into Final Cut will automatically have Canon Log 3 applied. And I don't like how this looks. There's a lack of contrast, there's too much saturation, just looks very generic and not cinematic. I tend to choose C-Log 2, and it's still very flat, but as you can see, there's a better amount of contrast. So you don't need these conversions. These conversions add contrast in, but it's still very flat overall. So I get C-Log 2, and you necessarily don't need that. I'll show you some edits without using that in case you're using like a different format or different camera. Okay, and then these are the adjustments I made. Now you can see that it's quite like underexposed, and I took out the saturation, but that is the cinematic look. This example is a little extreme. I'm going a little bit really flat, really desaturated, but personally really like this look. Okay, so we're gonna turn off our adjustments. I'm gonna take you through why I made them. Okay, so I started off with the color wheel. I tend to always start off with the color wheel, and I took down the saturation, I took down the temperature, and I took down the tint. I shifted it more towards a green, and then we are left with the color wheel like this. So this is before and after. So really I just took out saturation and I made it more blue, so these pillows come off more white. So keep in mind that these adjustments, you want the first adjustment to be on the top, because your image will render the adjustments differently in order. So just like DaVinci Resolve's node tree, this is how it affects the image top to bottom. So don't have your grain up the top. Now, if we look at the video scopes, you can see getting pretty close to the 100 there, so it's not too bad, but we're pretty far away from the blacks. But this is a very bright image, so I find it's fine. Like, there's not many blacks in this image. Maybe over here it could be a black, close to blacks, but it's a very bright image, so it can have just hardly any blacks. So I don't pay too much attention to the histogram here or the waveforms. So you'll see that these were all shot on the same day, same location, pretty much within the same few minutes of each other, a few seconds of each other, some clips. But just because it's exposed differently, it requires a different approach to editing. The next adjustment for this one, so here's the next adjustment, the curves. So you can see how this just makes the image darker, and there's a tiny bit of contrast added in, so the shadows definitely get darker. The whole image sort of just gets this darker look to it, and again, I think this is a really nice look and comes off very cinematic. So let's look at this curve, and we are bringing down the white point down, and what's very important I find is to bring the black point to the right, so that's darkening the darks. And you only just want to do that a bit, because you'll see YouTube compression, if your image is too flat, it will just ruin it. So if we're like this, those shadows are really lifted, and you'll get lots of pixelation in those lifted areas. So bringing down the exposure of the white. So if we bring up the video scopes again, you can see we're now at about 75, and most people teach to have your whites almost up to 100. I just personally don't like that look very much. It's a lot of contrast, and I like a smooth looking image that kind of reminds you of a painting almost. And then we're still quite far off zero on the waveform as well, but we're a lot closer. So if we turn off and on, you can see we're compacting the image a little bit, and we're more within like 75, and it's still above, but a lot closer to zero there. Okay. And then film grain, I am using about 70 at the moment. For whatever reason, it very slightly brightens your image, and I think it's a very important finishing touch to your grade. So this one, you'll see, like, I just changed sides of the bed or the room here, and we're gonna edit it differently. Canon puts, so C-Log 2, if I come here, turn off all our effects, I also flipped so it was more interesting to change in the edit. So the contrast is like almost perfect when you add C-Log 2. So if we come back to our wheels, all we had to do is bring down saturation, and then we are very close to 75, so like our last clip. So these two clips match kind of well. Like this one's a bit brighter because like we've got some clouds and more sky almost, so that's kind of why these are higher, where this one's a bit more shadowy because we're not pointing up into the sky. So I'm not too worried about these scopes matching up, because this is just a brighter shot in general. But again, we aren't getting close to the 100. I want to keep it down around 75, around here, where most people teach to make it close to 100 and close to blacks. But yeah, this is just personal preference in editing at the moment. And then we're still at the black point The black points are very similar, so that works pretty well. There's 2 shots. But you see how we did not have to do the darkening of the curves here? See how this looks washed out without the curves? This one just happened to be exposed in camera a bit darker, so I did not use those curves to darken the image and drop the blacks a bit. So okay, this one is 8K 60 RAW, so same thing, but I did not use a Canon LUT conversion out the gate. So it's absolutely nothing. 8K shot with a prime Sigma, so super sharp. If we turn them all off, you can see it's flat, and it might be hard to tell, but it is underexposed quite a bit. We are very low, so we want to bring these up to around up here. When I color grade, I don't really look at these, but for this tutorial it helps to learn. So we're going to brighten this up a lot. And I don't mind this looking quite a bit brighter than the other shots. They do all nicely flow in together. But let's go through the adjustments. So this one is just bringing saturation up. So we don't have that conversion LUT. So I'm bringing up the saturation, and then I've got another one here. All I'm doing is bringing down the temperature. We look a little warm and a little green. Bringing it down a little, and then also bringing up saturation here as well, because we all maxed out on the top one. So here we are with the curves, and I really like to use the curves. Not many people would do this with their curves, but I really brought this up. As long as you're not lifting your shadows too much. If you lift your shadows with video, I know you can do it with photo, but video, you'll get YouTube compression. Your image will look quite bad, so it's very important, especially if you're brightening your clip a lot. This is 8K RAW as well, so it's okay. This is really important, this part, to add in more contrast here, and I don't mind pushing it past 100 here, because the pillow is the subject of the shot, not the blank white sky. So I want the pillow, the edges of the pillow, maybe this area here, that other pillow, to fall about 70, just above 75. I don't care if it gets overexposed. This sky back here. So this is the main part of the image. This is what people are looking at. I don't mind that super bright part is overexposed. All these shots are blending nicely, and they're all 3 of them so far are color graded a different way. So there's a few more adjustments for this shot here. So curves 2. Now, like I said, this lifting the black point is very important. So you see how there's a bit of a shine, a bit too much of a lift here. Like, you can see how that lift sort of goes away, so we're dropping the black point again. And the reason I did it in a new curve is because if I go, I maybe didn't have to, but if I darken the blacks anymore with this curve, it's the angle of the curve is I'm affecting the blacks a lot, and then affecting the shadows not much at all. But if I make a new curve, I can just do a little smoother. See how that's way smoother from blacks to shadows? And I think that is a lot smoother, a lot more natural to get that smooth shadow roll. This is another 8K 60 shot. So here we have this one does have C-Log 2. So that's literally just a conversion. Canon does. You can get by with C-Log 3, just bring down the exposure a bit later. This was shot in C-Log 3. I don't know why C-Log 2 works better. And then in color wheels, we are literally doing nothing. So yeah, color grading is knowing the right move at the right time, the right amount. And you don't have to be fussy with it. I mean, you don't have to be super crazy with it. You can keep it simple, but yeah. The film grain gives it a little more brightness. This shot looks exactly the same, didn't do anything. This one, it has just been darkened a little bit. So if we open up, so I just brought down an exposure in here just a little bit. I could have done that in curves, but I honestly don't. If I have to bring down the exposure of the entire image, I generally will play with this a little bit, but I like curves because it's a bit more consistent from shadows all the way up to highlights, where if you're doing it here, you can quite quickly get an unnatural looking image because you're playing around with midtones, shadows, highlights differently, and then it looks good to your eye, but in time you'll realize that you maybe didn't make it look very natural. So just a tiny bit down, because I don't want too much of this lift to the darkest of darks. Like, you should almost blend in there, like into that letterbox there. So just down a touch, and all these shots are matching up pretty nicely. This one is quite different lighting and colors. We got curves and color wheels, which is just cooling off the image, taking out a little bit of purple by the looks. Okay. So for this one, I just wanted to bring down the exposure, but see how we like lose contrast? So you want to bring down the mids, but then you want to keep a bit of pop. So you lift this around here, and then like shadows too dark, so let's only target the mids a bit more. And by working with curves, you just get really smooth transition from shadows to midtones, where you might get a bit harsh and just not keep your edit looking smooth with its lighting if you do that. Okay, so this one, curves, no curves done, and you can just see that it's just a little bit too much lift. So yeah, and it's a very dark exposed image, so I'm okay with it being this dark because it's a moody shot. It's down in the shadows and it's a bit closer to black there, so that's literally just bringing down the shadows a bit. I maybe didn't bring down global because I want to keep the whites a little bit bright, just the shadows just a touch. And this one's an example of C-Log, and I sometimes, if I just want normal contrast, just normal contrast, correct exposure. I've been testing out this a lot I'll put his name on screen. I think it's kind of popular in Canon space. And then where it gets difficult is shots like this, where you have a subject in the shadows, but then there's so much brightness behind them, it can become difficult to edit. So then you get something a bit more crazy like this, and it can be hard. Dropping down the exposure there, bringing up the whites. Like, I'm not happy with this edit of this shot, so therefore I'm not gonna take you through it, but there's the before and after. So I personally just love this flat look when I first started. Taylor Cut Films a few years ago kept his edits very, very flat. That was the inspiration for keeping the image flat, not adding in too much contrast or saturation, or taking out saturation, or letting the color be the contrast in the image rather than shadows and highlights. And one last thing about this edit, it's not about the color grade, but is I scaled it up by 30% and then shifted it a little to the left, because I wanted to fill the frame a bit, so it was a bit more revealing of the subject, and then the pillows just filled the frame and there wasn't all this empty space over here. And then notice I'm not using this adjustment layer, I'm only using it for a letterbox, which really makes your image videos look much more cinematic. So even though all these shots were shot in the same location, pretty much within the same minutes of each other, or within the same hour of each other, every shot kind of just needed different grading to get the same look. Yeah, for these particular shots, I love the flat look because it is a dreamy, soft feeling, this edit or this location. Yeah, so not much contrast works. I think it looks more cinematic. It's easy on the eyes, easier to scan the image and stuff, but it's definitely not the only way to get the cinematic look. But let me know what you think of this one, and we will catch you guys in the next one.